Hi, everyone. This is Isra Garcia. As I'm talking in English, is because I have an international guest, a very, very, very special guest. We are in Disrupt Everything podcast series, a podcast about reinvention, a podcast about disruption, about a podcast about changing what really matters, a podcast about change, and also cool tools. Today, I have a special guest that has a really strong relationship with also cool tools. We'll tell you about it. Today, I have the pleasure to have with me one of the first persons I encountered in the internet when I was searching for answers or questions or searching for inspiration and growth. His name is Kevin Kelly. Thank you for being in this Everything podcast series, Kevin.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I am so glad you invited me.
So now, my pleasure is mine, Kevin, and I want to dissect as much as I can your life, your experience, and your work, so we can all learn from what you did, which is very remarkable. And you, that you are listening and watching Disrupt Everything podcast and video series, welcome, and we go with Kevin Kelly. Who is Kevin Kelly? Kevin Kelly is one of the founders and forerunners of Wired magazine in 1993, if I recall well. He worked with them for the first 7 years, and now is Senior Maverick or Maverick Senior at Wired. He's author of several New York Times bestsellers, including The Inevitable, like best-selling New Rules for the New Economy, an early book outlining the digital economy, Out of Control, a classic book, but not so classic, on decentralized and emergent systems, The Silver Cord, a graphic novel about robots and angels, and Cool Tools, also a bestseller, an oversized catalog of the best tools in the universe, and also What Technology Wants, a robust theory of technology. Kevin is co-founder of the Hackers Conference, which in 1984 already brought together programmers and has brought and tied together over 3 generations. In the past, he edited and published the Whole Earth Catalog, a compendium with the best tools available for self-education, and also participated in the launch of Well, an online community and social networks that led to the appearance of companies like AOL, for example, and it was a pioneering experience and a pioneering technological service that began in 1983. I was born in 1982, so 1 year after my born, you were already crashing with technology. Kevin also launched Cool Tools with the intention of analyzing 1 tool a day. That was in 2003. And in 2014, he published the book already mentioned, Cool Tools, with the best of 11 years of the project in a new bestseller on Amazon. Also, Kevin launched Cyberthon in 1990s, an experiment related to virtual reality. Kevin has appeared in the most important national and international publications: New York Times, The Economist, Time, Harper's Science, GQ, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. His photographies are common in publications of the stature of life, the magazine. He is also the co-founder of the Council of the Long Now Foundation, a group of people that encourage long-term thinking. We need this in Europe more than ever, who have created a clock and a library inside of a mountain in Texas that will last for 10,000 years. I can't wait to ask you about this, Kevin. I've read Kevin also cycled, which resonates on me, 5,000 miles across the United States. And he's being a nomad and a photographer that has traveled to countless corners of the world. And to finish, saying that Kevin does not have any college accreditation of any kind, and is what I call the self-made person that has created the life he is living right now. So, Kevin, with this such an exciting life experience, the first and the only question that comes to my mind is, if you were to put all this really staggering life experience in one timeline, and you have to name or remember or recall the milestones, the most important milestones, what will be that milestones in this life timeline?
One that you did not mention, the birth of my children.
Mm, mm.
I'm a father of 3 kids, and I think, like many parents, though, that moment is a major milestone in your life. There's before kids and after kids, and nothing will teach you as much about yourself as your children. So that would be one milestone. I think another milestone is having the very first article or thing that I wrote accepted by a magazine. I still remember that day because I had never written anything, and I went to the library to get a book about how to write a magazine article, and I read the book, and then I followed the instructions, and then I submitted the article, and they accepted it. And that was like, oh, that's huge. That's the beginning of something. And so I'm a big believer in learning how to do things from other people, and secondhand, like a book, a YouTube channel. I learned so much from YouTube. I watch YouTube tutorials about how to do everything, and I believe that you can learn an awful lot. I recently heard about doctors, surgeons, brain surgeons who watch YouTube of other surgeries. So they're learning how to do brain surgery watching
Wow.
YouTube. So I learned how to write a magazine article from writing a book. I learned how to start my own business by reading books. I learned how to do fundraising, everything, photography, everything that I have learned, I've learned from others, and not necessarily with others present, but through the mediated media, books, magazine articles, and YouTube. And I think that is a very underappreciated power in the world. And YouTube is only accelerating that power, because the beauty of YouTube is that you make something, you learn how to do something, then you make it, and you make a video of what you do, and you put that up with your improvements, and then someone else 2 hours later sees it and they say, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do this and modify it here. And then within 2 days, it's better than it has ever been before. So I think that's a milestone in my own life, was getting an article accepted from a publication. The third milestone was, I would have to say, arriving in Kathmandu, Nepal in 1970, maybe 75, 74, 75. And I've been traveling, so just coming to another country was nothing new, but this was a time machine. This was going back centuries. This was coming into a city of almost 1 million people where there were no cars at all. There was no bicycles. It was a totally pedestrian city of 1 million people. It was ancient and medieval in every respect, without electricity. And it was like going in a time machine. And that time machine was taking me to a place that had very little technology. And I didn't realize this was one of those landmarks that became more important as time went on, because that experience of living in the place and then going into the hills, into the Himalayas and the villages where there's even less technology, was I had a visceral first person experience of life without technology, and not just life, but like civilization, or like society, not just like camping, but I mean a society built without technology. And so I could feel what progress was. I could feel progress. I experienced progress myself. I came to believe in progress because I had been to places that didn't have progress. Later on, I could see within my own eyes those places go through 200, 300 years of development with my own eyes. And so I could see and feel progress. So I came to believe in the reality of progress because of that experience. It wasn't just like, oh, it's beautiful, nice food, nice people. Yes, but it was much more profound because it was a time machine. And I went back into time centuries. And so then I came back and I could experience with myself, with my life. So when I talk about progress, it's not theoretical to me. It's something that I have experienced. And that was another, I would say, a landmark in my life.
How do you define progress nowadays?
Yes. So I would define progress as simply as possible as the increase in choices, the increase in possibilities, the increase in opportunities. So what people say 500 years ago, they might have had, maybe they had enough to eat. They probably had a very strong family. They knew who they were. They didn't have to make up their identity. They were told, they were given who they were. They inherited who they were. So they had a very strong sense of themselves, where they fit into the cosmos. They had strong families, very strong communities. They probably had organic food. They probably maybe have a beautiful town to live in, look beautiful with the stones, whatever. What they did not have were choices. You were going to do whatever your father did or your mother. If you were really good with math, you would never be a mathematician. You could never be a ballerina. You could never be an engineer. You could not be probably even a musician. If you could have been Mozart, and it would all have been lost. All that talent would have been lost because you would have probably been plowing in the fields because there was no musical instruments to play. So what you didn't have was options, and what progress gives us are choices. And hopefully those choices are sufficiently accessible that every person born would have the opportunity to find the right tools to let their own genius and their own particular special specific genius blossom and be shared. That's what we're aiming towards. We don't have that now, but that's what progress means, is we're moving towards having a state in which the genius of every person has the opportunity to be expressed and shared. And there may be people today, there may be a Shakespeare born today somewhere, who knows, maybe they're in Africa, maybe they're in Europe, maybe they're South America, who is waiting for us to invent the technology that would allow their genius. Maybe they're a holographic,
Right.
They're holographic genius. They're waiting for us to invent the hologram so we can share their genius. And so we have a moral obligation to invent things and share them, and also the moral obligation to make sure everybody has enough to eat and clean water and healthcare as well, because you need those too. So progress to me is the expansion and development of choices. And that's what you get when you go to a city, people move to the city for that reason.
You said when, I think one of the reasons I didn't mention the family is because maybe I don't have one. So I don't have children.
Yeah.
So I don't know how amazing is this. But
Right.
you said something really important that really stuck on me is children and family help you to know yourself better. So what did you, or I learned to know myself better. So what did
Right.
you
Right. Right.
learn having having children? What did you learn about from yourself?
Yeah. Well, how did I get better? So
Exactly. Yeah.
um, I learned to be more patient. I learned to be less judgmental. I think, in a certain sense, parents have expectations about their children that you have to overcome because they are their own beings, and you may have expectations about how you want them to be or what you want them to become. And usually they're kind of like, you want them to be like you, but they aren't going to be like you. They may do something the opposite of you, and you have to you have to accommodate that and love them through that, and that helps you love others who are not like you. So it's another way of expanding your empathy.
Wow, beautiful. Kevin, what did you, what have you learned at Wired since you co-founded in 1993 up
Uh-huh.
until this day?
From Wired?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. So
What,
many things.
which ones do you rescate as the most
So,
maybe?
so I'll try to tell something that I have told other people this, but I'll try to say it in a way that I haven't, so I don't repeat myself. But there's a bit of advice that I've written down recently um, that was someone else said that I just stole. Um, and I don't know who said it, but they said, "Don't be the best. Forget about being the best. Just be the only." Okay. And that was something that I came to through my experience at Wired. And here's how it happened. Or let me tell you where I ended up, and then I'll tell you how I got there.
Please.
I ended up understanding that um, I've been very, very lucky, and I have had the privilege to be able to kind of do whatever I want to do, to have choice in what I do. And there are many opportunities that I have that someone would pay me to do it. I would enjoy doing it, and I would be pretty good at it. But I say no, because when I think about it, I also realized that somebody else could do this too. And what I am arranging my life, and have been for a while, is to do only the things that nobody else can do. Okay. So this came out of when I was at Wired doing stories. So we'd have story ideas, and I'd have a story idea, and I try to give away the story idea. I try to hire a writer to write the story, or to convince the other editors that this is a story we should do. And many, many times, the ideas would go nowhere. No one would like it, or people would say, that's not a good idea. That's not worth doing. But occasionally, one of those ideas would come back to me later on, like a year later. I would say, I want to come back to this idea because I really do think this is a good idea. Let me see if I can get someone to do it. And I couldn't get anybody to do it. I couldn't hire anybody. I would talk to the writers, here's this idea, I'm trying to give it away, and they would say, that's not so interesting. Okay, so kill that idea, get rid of that one. Then a year later, it would come back again. I'd say, no, actually, that is a really good idea. I can't get anybody to do it. That means I have to do it. Those are always my best ideas, because only I could do those. I couldn't even give them away. I couldn't pay anybody to do them, but I still thought that they were really good ideas. And so whenever an idea comes up, I want to be paid for it. Yes, I want to enjoy doing it. Yes, I want to be good at it. But if someone else can do it, I give it to them. And so what that means is if I'm working on an idea and someone else is doing another idea, it's not like, oh, I'm in a competition to do it. It's like, I don't have to do that one. You do it. Because if you're doing it, it means I don't have to do it. So because nobody else can do it, that means it's really, really valuable. That means it's the only. And so where you want to kind of move to, and where I've learned to move to, is to more and more to the only. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. That's a very high bar. That takes all your life to figure out, what is it that only I can do, that I enjoy doing, that people would pay me for. So it's not something that you usually find out in the beginning. You kind of have to move to it, often going through those stages of, well, I'll do any kind of work at first. And then later on, well, I'm going to only do work that pays well. Okay. And actually, I'm only going to do work that pays well, that I enjoy. Those are good stages, but there's another stage after that. And that is, can anybody else do it? So where you want to move to is to that position. And that's true for a company as well as for an individual. Companies want to do the same thing. You want to be the only. You don't want to be just another one doing it. You want to be the only one doing it, and you want to keep being the only. So that to me is a useful heuristic, I call it, for evaluating what to work on next, what to do, where to go with my life is, and that I learned that again from Wired. That was a lesson from Wired where I was trying to give away. So by the way, one of the things I do when I'm working on something is I tell my idea to everybody before it. I try to give away my idea as hard as I can because I want to make sure. I want to make sure that I'm the only one who could do it. So for years, I will talk about something and giving away these ideas, hoping that someone will take it.
And if they don't take it, it's a signal.
That's the sign that I am the only one.
And Kevin, you were saying that it took a long to find your only. What's your only? What would you say is your only?
Part of my only is as I'm incredibly optimistic. I have a lot of enthusiasm for things, and I like theory. I like to make theories about things, and I like to make theories based on personal experience. So not just reported theory, but not just reporting journalism as reporting, but reporting on my own experiences. I like to try to experience and do things. So maybe that's the better way to say it. I am a maker and a doer. So I like to do things and make things and then make theory about it from that. So that combination of, like, I use an example of, I was very early in trying out the online world in the early 80s. You were mentioning the Network Nation. Well, 10 years later, when the web came along and the internet and people were talking about it, I could talk about what was coming because I had experienced it in the past for 10 years. I'd been living it. It wasn't a theoretical idea. I could talk about it with confidence because I had been living online. It was something that I knew firsthand, and that was the source of my theory about it. So right now I am trying to work with generative art using AI to be creative. Working with a partner, with AI as a partner to be creative, to make things, to write things, to draw things, to paint things. That experience of me working with AI will form part of my theory about AI later on.
How do you create or experiment? Do you follow a method, a protocol, an experiment, and a framework, or you just?
No, I'm not a very big planner. I don't have a to-do list. I have a notebook here with I'm a notebook person with, all my sketches and drawings and ideas and stuff. But that's about all that I have. And so I'm a visual thinker, so I will sketch out things, and that's about as far as I go. I don't have a other process.
You wrote one of the articles that you wrote that really stuck on me for a long time is 1,000 true fans. You said that you only need 1,000 true fans. How can you adapt this to current times? Is it still working? Is it still being a valid, really demonstrable experience?
It is. In fact, earlier, I had a Skype call with a guy who was living off of his 1,000 true fans, 100%. So it began. My original idea was a theory, again, based on my own experience in making things. But since that time, there's plenty of evidence that it does work. But I always make a very strong caveat. It doesn't work for everybody, meaning not everybody is. In order to make it work, you have to spend a lot of time with your fans. You have to spend a lot of time cultivating, communicating, engaging with fans, and not everybody wants to do that. Some people just want to write or just want to photograph and paint. They don't want to deal with their fans. So it isn't for everybody, but it is an option that's available for everybody. And so there are people who are living with just 1,000 true fans. And I know some people like that. But even if you don't live only with 1,000 true fans, you can also, use it partially, like as I do. So I self-publish books to my fans. I have small publishers, and I work with New York publishers. So even if you go outside of it, you don't have to rely on it only. You can have it as part of your strategy. I don't spend a lot of time engaging with the fans as I should, or as I would need to if I was reliant only on the 1,000 true fans. It does take a lot of time.
It's because you put before creation that interaction, right?
Right. I would rather spend the time creating than that interaction. So if you're going to be supported by 1,000 true fans, you have to dedicate a lot of your time and energy to that interaction.
What would you highlight as the most essential part or learning of your latest book, the Inevitable?
There are several things I would say are takeaways. One is that no matter how old you are, no matter how young you are, you will be a newbie. You will be learning things all your life and having to relearn things. In 20 years from now, you will be like an old person, and you will have to learn a whole new set of skills and interfaces and metaphors to learn the new technology. And then 20 years later, you have to do it again. So we're all going to be forever newbies, forever ignorant and having to learn from start. So we should get good at that, because so you want to find out how you learn. You want to understand how you learn best. And even I don't know how to do that very well. I can learn, but I don't know how to optimize my learning, and I would like to know. So if
Do you
you
have
can
any?
find out, what?
No, sorry. You have any idea how to learn best?
No, and that's the thing, is that there's not. I searched. There's not a single course. There's not a single course in the world on how to learn how to learn. I saw there's one blog post somewhere, and it's the guy, I just read it last week. The guy does a pretty good start for learning how to learn, but there's no course, And I don't think you can do it by yourself. I think you need teachers, you need discipline, you need practice, you need testing, you need colleagues. It's like learning how to play basketball professionally. You need trainers, and I think it may take years. So it's exactly the kind of thing you should learn in high school at the very least. You should graduate from high school knowing how to optimize your learning.
It would be a really nice idea and goal,
Yeah.
right? What are the most amazing tools or amazing and useful cool tools that you have seen or found? What would you be your top 3?
Well, so I have a very broad definition of tool. It's not just a hammer or something you hold in your hand. It can be anything that's useful or handy. And so here's a tool that I would maybe suggest to the kind of people that are listening to your podcast or YouTube. And that is, I'm a big believer in what is now called Upwork. It used to be called Elance, and before that was called Odesk. Basically, it's a global marketplace for freelancers. And the way I use it, you can use it 2 ways. You can be either the freelancer or the person who hires it. I am a big believer in hiring out as much of the work I need to do to other people as possible. And if it's any kind of a digital work, it can be to anybody in the world. And a lot of the people who are on Upwork are very professional, very world-class quality, and not very expensive, and very fast. So whether it's design work that you need, or lawyers, or editors, or photographers, any of that kind of work, I try to hire out the meticulous part of it. So like when we did a book, we had pictures of tools, to take an example, but we wanted all those pictures to be on a white background. So you can do that in Photoshop. I could do that in Photoshop, but it would take me a long time. Someone who's really good in Photoshop can do it in a couple minutes. So we paid 25 cents per image to have the background removed. And it took them maybe a day to do hundreds and hundreds of them. They got some money, which they wanted. I was very happy to pay whatever it was. And we did that with doing the books. Like we had people proofing the book, 4 different people proofing at the same time, so we could proof it like in a couple of days, whereas normally it would take months. So
all of them working together.
Right. So it's speed, quality, and an expense. And it's global. Again, they could be working while you're sleeping. All kinds of things like that can be hired out just from your desktop within minutes. You'll make a spec. Within hours, you'll have people replying. You can choose from them. There's an escrow system so that both sides are protected in the payment. You have to all be happy. Upwork. It's a tool that you should know about. It will make you more productive. So that's an example of a tool. I've been fiddling with this. Calipers. Calipers are, I have a little plastic calipers that I carry in my pocket to measure things when I'm at the hardware store because I don't know. Here's again, these are simple things. This is a tool I carry in my pocket. I have one in every single one of my pants pockets. It's a 99-cent, $1 box cutter made out of plastic. So it's like a knife, but it weighs almost nothing because it's plastic. It's forever sharp because it has a snap-off blade. It's instant. And even though I work at a desk, I use this so many times every day, opening packages, cutting stuff, scraping stuff. It's amazing how often I use this. And I have one of them in every pair of pants that I have. And that's a cool tool.
You gave me an idea with Upwork to do an experiment of outsourcing everything I do through Upwork. So
it's amazing. I tell you, you will be so amazed. And here's the other part is once you find someone, like say you have a project and you try maybe 4 different people, and you find one of them is better, then you can go directly to them. You still go through with the escrow, but you go directly to them right away, and they become like an employee to you because you can count on them, you know their quality, you can communicate with them. So you can
You
try
build
lots
that
of
trusted
right.
network,
You
right?
try lots of them, and you can work up a little network of people that you come back to.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
these insights.
right.
So 2020, you wrote back in some years ago. You wrote what technology wants. So 2020, Kevin Kelly, what technology wants in 2020?
Yeah. So my book, What Technology Wants, was about the long-term biases in technology, where it kind of, as a system, wants to go. Like the internet wants to copy things. If you make a digital copy, it kind of wants to be copied. It's very hard to stop it from being copied. So you could say, copies want to be copied, and you want to make you want to understand that when you're making something digital, it's going to be copied. You can't stop people from copying it. So how do you make money while it's being copied? That's an example of what it wants. And so I would say one of the things that maybe a new thing to say about technology is that data wants to be linked. So if you're collecting data, and particularly if you're collecting big data, but of any sort, that unless you link that data to something else, unless it's linked to other data, unless it's connected, it's worthless. It's like when I say naked data kind of dies, it's dead. The whole thing about data and collecting data is that unless you do something with it, unless you link it and relate it to something else, it's not really very useful. This was part of the problem with the quantified self, which I helped invent, which is the idea of monitoring your own body, measuring your own body, tracking your own body. The problem was that data was very difficult to connect to anything, to make it meaningful. And what it wants to do, data wants to be connected to other data in a kind of like a database, to be relational. And so if you could do that, you can make the data more valuable, and the more you link it, the more valuable it becomes. If you try to cut it off, keep it private and things like that, it becomes less valuable. Some people, that's a good thing. They don't want to be valuable, but valuable and useful to me are the same thing. I would say it becomes less useful as well. So that's one thing I have learned in the last couple of years, is that data wants to be linked, wants to be connected. What else would I say? Another general trend about technologies with this mirror world, the world of the so the thing I think that comes after smartphones is smart glasses, clear glasses that you put on, that you can see through. You see the real world, but you also see the overlay of a virtual world at the same scale. So it's the same size and at the same place as the real world, but it's virtual. And that virtual copy, that digital twin of the real world, is very, very useful. We can do so many things with it. And it's another way of saying that is like, if you could imagine computers start off really big, and then they get small as a refrigerator, and then they get small, they could sit on our desk, and then they get smaller, they sit on our lap, and they get smaller, they sit in our pockets, then they get smaller and we wear them. And the next step was either to put them inside of us, or even more so, we can go inside the computer. So that's what AR, augmented reality, is basically we're going inside the computer. The computer is surrounding us. We can see it when we have the glasses on. We realize that the entire world is as a digital version. We're inside the computer. And that inside the computer, that vision of the world, the mirror world, is it's very profound, because it means that the world outside can be searched, or can be manipulated in the same way that we did with information. So the web was, we digitized information and then we could search it and do all kinds of things with that information. And now we're taking the rest of the world and we're digitizing it, and then we can search it and do all kinds of things with the world, not just information, but the world. And you see that world with this, and this is the world that the robots live in. They live in this world. That's what they see when they look at the world. So that's a big thing coming, is this what I call the mirror world. Sometimes it's called the AR cloud. Sometimes it's called spatial computing. All those same terms. We don't really have a good term for it. That's where we're going in the next 20 years.
You've been working on self-education tools for years with the Whole Health Catalog. What would you say that are the best alternatives that are available today for self-education? I think you mentioned the big one, YouTube, but
YouTube.
will you add any other tool or platform for self-education and growth, development?
Well, newsletters to some extent, but no, I think YouTube has so much to offer. You could spend all your time there and not reach the bottom of it. There's tutorials, there's things like this, interviews. There are people who making documentaries. No, there may be some room for things like who are doing like classes online or workshops at certain points that they may be useful, and maybe even the Zoom version. I don't know. I don't have that much experience myself with those kinds of workshops. My daughter actually does those. The thing about YouTube is that it's vast, it's very uneven. Some of the stuff is really great, some of it's not good. I think what I would like to see is some way to navigate through YouTube better, to pick out the good things from the not so good. That's what we need. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to invent something that would be very useful and maybe make money, invent that. Give us a tool for being able to find the best stuff in YouTube. And it has to be more than just search. It has to be something else. It has to be another layer of quality that you are giving. And maybe it's user generated in the way that Reddit or Dig works, where you have people upvoting things. But there has to be a better way to find the good stuff on YouTube.
Are you using this? Are you sharing also this idea because you want to share it? And if no one does it, you will. And if no one does it, you will do it.
Yeah, someone else will do this one. Don't worry.
Kevin, what's the link between between photography and Kevin Kelly?
That's a good question. So when I was growing up, I've been a maker all my life. I've been making model trains when I was a kid, and I made a nature museum as a kid, and I made chemistry labs, and I built things in our house, decks and stuff. And I was interested. I was a science nerd. I took every single science and math class in my college prep high school. I don't think it's ever been done. I doubled up math, doubled up science every year. So I was a science nerd, but at the same time, I was interested in art. I did paintings, and so I couldn't decide to go to MIT or to RISD, this art school. And photography for me was a combination of that. It was chemistry and art, because when I was doing photography, you needed to do the chemistry. You had to do the darkroom. You had to work in the darkroom with the chemicals and process the film, and then process the images with optics. So you needed to know science and chemistry to do photography. And so it was very technical, but there was also about art. So for me, it was this combination of photography, art, and doing that was perfect. And so the travel part of it was just accidental. That was not originally what I was thinking of as photography, but I got interested in traveling. And so I started to photograph that, which changed the kind of photography that it did, and changed my travel. So most of the photography that I've done has been a little bit more of the documentary, anthropological documentary. But that's how it started. So for me, it began as my interest in art and science, and it became a way for me to see. So I would go outside, I would travel, I would go places I would not go to because of photography. So photography became the excuse to drive me to go look. It was because photography, I would get out of my hotel room and go over there because I was looking for photographs, but that was the motivation, the excuse to see, to look, to investigate, to find stuff. And so I used it as that probe. And you know, beyond just the art, it was then the reason I was going outside.
Wow, such inspiring. It's 12 minutes to get
Right.
to the 50 minutes. So I have a lot of questions. I'm gonna get to two questions and you can reply shorter version, because I don't want you to waste. I don't want to get more time that you
Right. So I have to leave. I have to leave in about 4 minutes.
Okay, so I'm gonna go for the last questions. I'm gonna do like faster. What do you have, a morning or night ritual that you consider essential that you can share with us?
I don't have either morning or night rituals at all. Every morning or night or evening is a little different. I will say that I tend to do my most difficult work late at night. And the most difficult hard writing I will do very late at night, and I will put on headphones and I'll play the same track of music on a loop over and over and over and over again. And that somehow puts me into some kind of a meditative trance that helps me really, really focus.
Is any special track? Any particular track?
There's one track, and it's a Bulgarian men's choir. They're singing a sacred song. I don't know what it is. And I've played that thousands of times.
We'll ask to Claudia if she can share with us.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you. What three books would you recommend to a person that you don't know?
If they're from the West, or maybe even from the East, I think everybody should at least once in their life read the Bible all the way through. Because no matter what you think it says, it doesn't say that.
I like that. Thank you.
It can be very disturbing in many parts. So read the whole thing all the way through, because whatever you think it's not about that. No. The second book that I think people should read. So there's the book that's kind of hard to read, but it's very short and you don't need to read the whole thing. It's called Finite and Infinite Games. And it really informed my vision of the future and deciding what to do. And it says basically there's two kinds of games in the world: finite, which have winners and losers, and infinite games, which are open-ended. And the whole purpose of the game is to keep the game going. And what you want to do is you want to play infinite games. You don't want to play finite games. You want to look for infinite games and play them and forget about the finite games. So that's a really good book. The third book, Maybe it's something in science fiction. Boy, what would I? Or maybe. Let me think about that. I'll answer that. What's the next question?
Okay. Next question is: what critical skills would you highlight for this new disruptive and connected world we live?
I think I talked about the main one, which is if you could learn how to optimize your learning, that's the Uber golden ticket. That will help you in whatever you need to do if you can figure out how to learn better. But the second skill would be to learn how to ask good questions.
What are the 3 persons that has impacted you the most?
3 people? Living or dead?
Living or dead, yeah.
Living or dead? Well, Jesus Christ is the first one. The second one would be Henry David Thoreau, the American transcendentalist who wrote Walden Pond about living simply. And the third one would be Stuart Brand, who wrote the Whole Earth Catalog and whom I worked for and still work with. So I have time for one more question.
Perfect. The last question is, what would be like for Kevin Kelly to live a virtuous life or a great life? What are your recipe, or what is your recipe?
I don't follow that question.
Sorry, what is your suggestion for living a virtuous life or a great life?
A virtuous life. Oh, I see.
Sorry for sometimes my rusty English.
No, it's okay. I understand. I would say to follow the golden rule, to treat other people as you hope they would treat you, to understand that when you give away, the universe will give back to you. So be as generous as you possibly can. You will never regret giving something away on your deathbed. And to be as honest with yourself as you possibly can. So with those 3, they're hard, nobody's perfect, but you can always try and get better in those things. And I hope that whatever else I said was useful to your fans. And I really enjoyed your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Is any other thing you want to add?
No, people can find me at my initials, kk.org. I have a newsletter called Recommendo, which is really 6 very tiny little recommendations every week, every Sunday morning. Sign up for recommendo.com, and it's a free newsletter, just one page. We have a podcast about cool tools. I interview somebody every week, asking them what their 4 favorite tools are. And I have this Vanishing Asia book, which is all about the parts of Asia disappearing. It's an Instagram account right now. It'll be a book next year. But kk.org is my main site.
We'll share all the links in the show notes. Yeah. Kevin Kelly, thank you so much for your time. Right. The journey continues. All the best.
Thank
Peace
you.
and love and respect. Bye. 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 Well, you had Kevin Kelly. We had Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly on Disrupt Everything podcast series. Wow, what a milestone. I'm really touched. I'm really moved, and I'm really happy and satisfied to have him in the podcast and share his knowledge. Grab him and rob him a few minutes more than there was allowed. And I hope it resonates with you. I hope you taking things that you can apply to your life, and I hope you are taking action and get inspired by what Kevin shared with us. And remember, disrupt everything, because if you don't disrupt everything yourself, you cannot disrupt everything. And if you cannot disrupt everything, something will come and will disrupt you. Thank you for being in Disrupt Everything podcast series. Please subscribe and consider to leave a review, share it with others, and the journey continues. No matter what, perfect or imperfect, the journey continues. I'm Isra Garcia. You're listening Disrupt Everything podcast series.